Good evening, everyone. Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to get started in a few minutes, but I'm going to give people time to tune in. So I'll be right back. So again, I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for people to tune in. Okay, I see I have a couple of people here. Please let me know if the audio is fine, if the video is fine. I just want to make sure that the video is not buffering, that the audio is not buffering. So if you can throw up the 7 in the chat room, I would appreciate it so that we can go ahead and get started. I see we have a couple of people, so if you can just let me know if the audio is fine, I'd appreciate it. Just throw up a 7 in the chat room and we can go ahead and get started. Okay, I'm going to assume that everything is okay because I haven't received a response one way or the other. Again, okay, I see a couple of people have responded. Shout out to Blessed. Thanks for letting me know that everything's fine. I appreciate it. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So you all have read all this news about Kanye West. I'm sure, it started off with his press conference that he had for his campaign. And I will post a link to the entire press conference so you can hear the entire thing for yourself. So during that press conference, he made some outlandish statements. We're going to talk about those. And then after that press conference, he put out a series of tweets, very disturbing tweets. And he has since deleted those tweets. His tweets deal with the Kardashian family. They deal with his wife. They deal with divorce. They deal with actually the movie Get Out. And we're going to go into all of it. And, also Kim Kardashian put out her statement as well about this whole situation. And I'm going to read from her statement as well so that we can have a full discussion. Shout out to David Bowman. Thanks for tuning in. So real quick, while we wait, I'm just going to go on the Facebook real quick to pull up the article that has Kim Kardashian's statement about this whole issue. Okay, so I was able to find that. Okay, so I'm going to start off by sharing an article that talks about some statements that Kanye West made during his press conference. Okay, so let me share my screen. I'm going to highlight statements, a couple of the statements that he made. I'm not going to go through everything that he said in the particular press conference. I'm just going to highlight a couple of points. So one of the points that Kanye West made during this press conference, he's, as you all know, he's running for president. And from what I understand, he actually filed his paperwork. So it's official, given the fact that he's filed his paperwork so late, he may not even be on the ballot in many states. But he gave this press conference. And during this press conference, he made a statement about Harriet Tubman. And what I want to do is try to find the exact statement. He mentioned Harriet Tubman and he said she never actually freed the slaves. She just had the slaves go work for other white people. And I want to just address this real quick. I mean, we all know the history of Harriet Tubman. According to Wikipedia, they say that she freed 70 enslaved people. And I know that there may be other reports that go into more detail and say that it's even more than that. But she risked everything After she ran away from bondage and gained her freedom, that wasn't enough for her. She decided to go back and rescue other enslaved Africans in this country. She decided to risk everything, to risk her very life, to risk her freedom for her people. Um, so she went back on, I think it was like at least 13 journeys to rescue enslaved Africans. Put everything on the line for this. Freed people, literally freed people from bondage. And you have Kanye West making this ridiculous, absurd statement about her never really freeing the slaves, but having them work for other white people. There is a huge difference between somebody actually being enslaved and somebody working for someone else, though there are huge differences. A slave is property of the slave master. A slave has no rights at all. A slave can be beaten. A slave can be killed. Anything can happen to a slave. But when people gained their freedom, they were not subjected to that very same state of oppression. Now, of course, you can say that, they weren't entirely free from oppression, period, but they were free from slavery. Of course, when they went to the North, they had to experience racism. Of course, they didn't have complete autonomy. Anytime you work for someone, you don't have complete autonomy. And even when you are self-employed, you don't have complete autonomy and absolute freedom. So this notion that she did not free the slaves is absolutely absurd on its face. And we know that this is not, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. We know that this is not anything new with Kanye West. He's made absurd statements before about slavery. For instance, he suggested that slavery sounded like a choice. He talked about how people were, in bondage for 400 years and it's all y'all and y'all didn't do nothing and y'all just were slaves, basically suggesting that it was some choice that slaves made to remain in bondage. But here you have an example of a woman who actually fought to liberate slaves from bondage. And you had this guy actually questioning whether or not she actually freed the slaves. Again, having a 9-to-5 is not slavery by any stretch of the imagination. And at that time, when Black people were still enslaved, what else could you expect for them to do? There were rare exceptions of people that managed to have their own businesses and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, during that time, there were very limited options. And there's a huge difference, again, from being held in bondage and working a 9-to-5. So that's one of the ridiculous things that Kanye West said during his press conference. He also went on, and his press conference was very rambling. It was all over the place. It was completely disorganized. At one point, he got into some confrontation with a Black woman, referring to her as Sister Soldier. So it was very disorganized. Then he went on to some rant about abortion, and he talked about how he wanted to have his daughter aborted or something like that. And Kim Kardashian decided to move forward with the pregnancy. And, he got emotional about that. And he also talked about how his mom wanted to, thought about aborting him. And he got really emotional to the point where he was crying and all that kind of stuff. That press conference was a rambling mess. And, people asked him, well, what is his position on abortion? Because based on his comments, you would think that he was strongly against abortion. But basically, he said and clarified that he doesn't support outlawing abortion. He just thinks that every person that has a baby should get $1 million or something crazy like that. those ideas were so far-fetched. And I mean, that idea of giving people $1 million just for having a baby, I mean, it sounds like it's great. Like, I mean, of course, who wouldn't want $1 million to have a child? But it's just so outlandish, so ridiculous, so buffoonish that something like that would even be put forth as a viable idea. And it's just an example of another reason why this guy is not qualified to even be running for office. You know, and I did a prior video where I explained why I don't support his candidacy. And all his campaign is a huge distraction. You know, it's not going to do anything except for take away votes from Joe Biden. And I know how people feel about Joe Biden. I'm not a supporter of his, but as someone else had pointed out, in these presidential elections, unfortunately, you have a two-party system where you primarily have one or another of them are going to be elected, either Trump or Joe Biden. And we know, even though Joe Biden sucks, he is a lesser evil than a Donald Trump for all the reasons that I pointed out before, and I'm not going to rehash them here. You all know, who are familiar with my channel, my positions on these particular issues. So you have this Kanye West brought into this election, and you have people seriously talking about voting for this guy, even though he really has no chance of being president of the United States. The only thing his participation in this election is going to do is undermine Biden and help Donald Trump. And this should not be a surprise. I mean, after all, Kanye West supported Donald Trump. You know, he supported him until a couple of days ago or whatever, when he's saying he no longer supports him, but I don't believe it. I mean, he went to the White House acting like a fanboy. You know, this man is all over the place wearing that Donald Trump hat. And then because he decides to run for president, he expects us to believe that he doesn't support Donald Trump. Anybody supporting Donald Trump is not worthy of our vote, for all the reasons that I have already laid out before. So that's him and his, statements at that press conference. I just had to express my thoughts about that. And it's like, how are you going to disrespect one of our greatest ancestors, a freedom fighter, somebody that was on the front lines, literally fighting for the freedom of Black people, not somebody doing videos, not somebody doing a song, not somebody talking or writing something, but somebody actually doing something for the liberation of our people, risking everything for the liberation of our people. And you had his brother, totally disrespectful to this sister, saying she didn't free the slaves when that's literally what she did. So those are my thoughts about that. I had to share my thoughts about that. And I'm going to move on to the other statements that Kanye West put out after this press conference. So let me see if you all are saying something. And then John Pro said, why was he campaigning in South Carolina? That state isn't important in terms of the Electoral College. He should have went to Wisconsin or Florida. I mean, the thing is, like, this is not I don't really see this as a real campaign. It just seems like a huge publicity stunt for Kanye West, an ego boost for him. The fact that he's running, it may have something to do with his bipolar condition. So yeah, I mean, this is not a serious campaign. I mean, they couldn't even put together an organized press conference or, a rally. So this is not a serious campaign. So of course they're not thinking out things like that. According to one report that I read, somebody arrived at this press conference early, and they got there and they found it was completely disorganized. So so let's move on to the next article about Kanye West, where he put out these tweets. You got to see this stuff. And it's just a shame. Like, I want to be perfectly clear. I'm not making fun of anybody because of their mental state or anything like that. I'm not going to attack him because of that. I'm just saying that he's not uh, suitable to serve as president, and I don't think that his campaign is really serious. I mean, you don't wait until a couple of months before the presidential election to get into a race if you're serious. I mean, most of the candidates have been campaigning for years before the election, so they were serious about it. They had they set up committees and all that kind of stuff. They set up policy positions. I mean, this again is not a serious campaign. It's just an opportunity for this guy to boost his ego. And we know that he has like narcissistic tendencies. I mean, he's referred to himself as a god, and now he's on some religious stuff. So yeah, let's go through some of these tweets. So it said Monday night, Kanye West took to Twitter and he sent out a series of tweets. He mentioned Drake, he mentioned his wife, and he mentioned his mother-in-law and other people. And I'm just going to read some of these tweets. He said, Kim tried to lock him up with a doctor, and he's referring to Kim Kardashian. And he said that everybody knows the movie Get Out is about me. And there's some more quotes in here where he references Get Out. And this is something that people have already observed. Like, people have talked about Kanye West being in the sunken place. People have compared his situation to Kim Kardashian. And when I first did my review of Get Out, I talked about that as well. So he may be onto something with those comments, because in the film Get Out, you all remember what it was about. You had this white woman who was in this relationship with this black man, and she took this black man to visit her family, and they lived way out in the middle of nowhere in some big house on a big piece of land. And basically she was getting them there to, for nefarious type of purposes, wanting to use him basically to, sacrifice him, to take his body and have somebody else's brain inserted into his body, or someone else's consciousness into his body, and his real self being, put into a sunken place where he has no control, and he's basically under white mind control. And, in this film, it turns out that this woman did not love this guy. She was just trying to set him up so that her white parents could kidnap him and use his body for those purposes. And it turns out that she did this to several black people, including a black woman. So she would pretend like she was in love with these black men and then lure them to her family's house. And then those men would basically be kidnapped against their will, have their consciousness suppressed to the sunken place, and have somebody else take over their bodies. And, it's just about the exploitation of the black man at the hands of a white woman. So Kanye West is talking about this. He's drawing the connections. And in that movie, The Sunken Place, black minds were literally taken over. They were brainwashed to a degree where they had no power. All of the person had to do, all the character in the film had to do, is click a spoon against a teacup to trigger the hypnosis. So he's saying that that movie was about him. He said, everybody knows that Get Out movie was about me. He says, Kim was trying to fly to Wyoming with a doctor to lock me up, like on the movie Get Out, because I cried about saving our daughter's life yesterday. So again, that's a reference to his statements about abortion and all that kind of stuff. And he's saying that, because of those statements, his wife thought he was mentally unstable. And we know that he's been hospitalized before for for these manic episodes, these bipolar episodes. And basically he's saying that she was going to get a doctor to lock him up. And then he put out this other tweet where he said, if I get locked up like Mandela, y'all will know why. And it's even more, he mentions Drake's name. He just says Drake. And I was listening to this other YouTuber, this person that does all this celebrity news, and they were suggesting that this whole thing was triggered by some song that Drake put out where he's had some subliminal disses towards Kanye West. And I haven't heard the song myself, so I can't speak on it, but they're saying that that's what triggered all these tweets. Yeah, so let me see. And then he actually tweeted out for Kim Kardashian and her mother to call him. He was saying that they're not accepting his calls. And then he goes into all this stuff about a sex tape. Like, of course, you all know what happened with Kim Kardashian. She got famous through a sex tape that she did with Ray J, the R&B singer Ray J or whatever. That's how people first got to know who she was. And here he's talking about that, and he's basically suggesting that he doesn't want his daughters, his children, to ever do anything like that. And he says, I put my life on the line for my children, that North's mother would never sell her sex tape. And he's basically saying that he doesn't want the same situation that happened with Kim to happen with his children. He said, I put my life on my God that North's mom would never photograph her doing Playboy, and that's on God. I'm at the ranch. Come and get me. And so he's saying all this stuff. And then he even goes as far as to say NBC locked up Bill Cosby. Yeah, so he's just going on and on in these tweets. And then he stops and then he talks about how he's going to focus on music now. And then right after this tirade on Twitter, he talks about how he's releasing an album this Friday. And I think a lot of this centers around his need for attention and to promote this album. That's probably what it's all about. He mentions the album. And then here's another set of tweets that were put out after that. Let's see if this is here it is right here. So he put out another series of tweets talking about divorce. He says this, they tried to fly in with 2 doctors to 5150 me. He said, I've been trying to get divorced from Kim, since she met with Meek at the Waldorf Hotel for prison reform. And then he even refers to his mother-in-law as Chris Jong-un, in reference to that dictator in North Korea. So he's just going off. He said, Chris and Kim put out a statement without my approval. That's not what a wife should do. And then it says white supremacy, basically suggesting that his own wife and his mother-in-law are white supremacists or engaging in white supremacist type activity. Yeah, he said Meek is my man and was respectful. That's my dog. Kim was out of line. I'm worth $5 billion and more through Christ. And then he goes on and on. And then later, like, I think it was today, he had a meeting. He had people come to his ranch, and Dave Chappelle was one of the people there to show him some support, as you can see in these photos. Yeah, so Kanye West has been going off. Yeah, so let me see what else. Yeah, so that's some of the stuff. I'm not going to go through all of it. Again, I'll have links to these articles in the description box. Also, I need to pull up this. I'm going to pull up what Kim Kardashian had to say about this whole thing. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. Just bear with me a second. So this is what Kim Kardashian put out on Instagram. She said, as many of you know, Kanye West has bipolar disorder. Anyone who has this or has a loved one in their life who does knows how incredibly complicated and painful it is to understand. Um, she said, I've never spoken publicly about how this has affected us at home because I am very protective of our children and Kanye's right to privacy when it comes to his health. But today I feel like I should comment on it because of the stigma and misconceptions about mental health. Those that understand mental illness or even compulsive behavior know the family is powerless unless the member is a minor. People who are unaware or far removed from this experience can be judgmental and not understand the individual themselves have to engage in the process of getting help, no matter how hard the family and friends try. She said, I understand that Kanye is a subject of criticism because he's a public figure and his actions at times can cause strong opinions and emotions. He is a brilliant but complicated person who, on top of the pressure of being an artist and a black man who has experienced the painful loss of his mother and has to deal with the pressure and isolation that is heightened by his bipolar disorders. Um, those who are close with Kanye know his heart and understands his words sometimes do not align with his intentions. She went on to say, living with bipolar disorder does not diminish or invalidate his dreams and his creative ideas, no matter how big or unattainable they may feel to some. This is a part of his genius, as we have all witnessed many of his big dreams, and part of it is cut off, have come true. I think she's saying come true. Um, and she goes on to say, we as a society um, talk about giving grace to the issue of mental health as a whole. However, we should also give it to the individuals who are living with it in times when they need it the most. I kindly ask that the media and public give us the compassion and empathy that is needed so that we can get through this. Thank you for those who have expressed concern for Kanye's well being and for your understanding. With love and gratitude, Kim Kardashian West. So that's what she had to say about this whole thing. And, one thing that I thought about during this whole episode is like, what if Kanye West is not crazy? Like, what if they're trying to make him appear crazy or whatever and put him in a situation where they're exercising some kind of control over him or whatever? It's just a crazy situation, man. I mean, the whole thing just makes it abundantly clear why Kanye West should not be president, why it makes it clear why no one in their right mind should vote for him. He needs his medication, he needs his therapy. He does not need to be the next president of the United States. So let me see what you all are saying before I sign out. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. Yeah, so somebody mentioned that Kanye has an album to sell. Yeah, I mean, I think that that may be part of it, like creating hype so people will want to buy his album or to even hear about his album. Ryan said it's hard for me to coddle a billionaire. Yeah. Yeah, peace and blessings to Bonafide. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. Um, Again, I encourage everybody to rate, comment, and subscribe to this channel. If you're not already subscribed, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. Peace and blessings, everyone. Have a great evening.